In this video, we're going to talk about the Excel VLOOKUP function. The VLOOKUP function causes a lot of people problems who are new to Excel, but I think using a few real-world examples, we can help break it down and hopefully make it easier to understand. If you want to follow along, you can download the spreadsheet at the URL listed in cell A9. So the VLOOKUP function stands for vertical lookup. We're looking up information in a vertical table, kind of like a phone book. If you think about the way your phone book is organized, it's sorted from A to Z alphabetically from top to bottom. So A is at the top, Z is at the bottom. And when you look up a name in a phone book, you start at the top and you start going through until you find the name that you're looking for. And then once you've found that name, you look to the right to the next column and you find the phone number. We're going to look at a similar example on this spreadsheet. We have a list of scores for students. We want to turn these scores into grades. Here I have a table for every score that a student can earn, the grade associated with that score. So if I were going to do this manually, let's take a look at Joe. Joe earned an 85 on this assignment. So if I wanted to look up his score manually, I would come here to my table. I would say that Joe's score is greater than 0, greater than 60, his score is greater than 70, his score is greater than 80, but his score is not greater than 90, so I have to go back up to 80. I found Joe's score because I know Joe scored 80, but he didn't quite reach 90, so Joe earns a B. I did that process manually, and I could do that for all of these students here in this table, or I could use a VLOOKUP function to look up each of their scores. So I'm going to delete that B that I entered manually, and instead I'm going to use the VLOOKUP function. I'm going to type equals, and I'm going to type VL. Excel uses autocomplete. It found the only function that starts with VL, and that is the VLOOKUP function. That's the one that I want, so I'm going to hit the Tab key. It's a shortcut to autocomplete what is already highlighted. Now Excel asks me for the lookup value. The lookup value is the information that you know already. In this example, we know Joe's score. Joe's score is 85. So instead of typing 85, I'm just going to click on that score, on that 85. Then I'm going to type a comma to go to the next argument. Excel asks for the table array. You can see in this formula, table array is highlighted. That tells me that's the information that Excel currently wants me to enter. So the table array is your list of lookup values with their associated information. In this case, it will be the list of scores and the associated grades. So all we have to do is highlight that entire column, the entire table. So in this example, it's E3 through F7. Now, currently, these are relative cell references, so if I copied and pasted this function somewhere else, the reference to this table is going to change, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to type the F4 key, and Excel automatically adds some dollar signs to make those cell references absolute references. So I'm going to type another comma. Now Excel is asking me for the column index number. Now this is the information that we want. We want the grade. We know the score, we want the grade. In this table, highlighted in kind of a pinkish red right here, the score column is column number 1. The grade column is column number 2. It's the second column, so I'm going to type a 2 right there. And the range lookup. It wants to know if we want an approximate match or an exact match. Because we're using a continuous range, we can have scores anywhere from 0 to 100 I want an approximate match. So I'm going to type true there. This is an optional parameter, but I would highly recommend using it because this parameter can throw you off if entered incorrectly. So I'm going to close that, and it tells us that Joe got a B. That's what we expected, so that's good. So I am going to double click on that box in the bottom right part of the cell, and that will automatically fill that formula in for the rest of the students. And just by looking at it, it looks like everything was filled in correctly. So one benefit of using formulas instead of typing this information manually is that these values will update automatically if the scores change. For example, let's say I found a mistake in the grading and Julia really got a 59 on her assignment. If I update her score, her grade is automatically updated to an E. I'll change Julia back to a 62. Now, there's some things we need to be concerned about in our lookup table. You notice that I started with 0 and I went up to 90. So Excel is expecting this data to be, the lookup values to be in ascending order. That means from smallest to largest. I'm going to go ahead and show you what happens if I sort this data. I'm going to sort by score from largest to smallest and click OK. It just screwed everything up. It's just not the way Excel is expecting this data. We're getting the wrong answers. It's just not working right. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that sorting and turn everything back to the way it was. So if we look at, I'm going to click on cell C4 and I'm going to highlight the formula to see what's happening. You can see that the lookup value is now referencing cell B4. Because we used absolute references for the table array, it's still referencing the exact same cells. It's still using the second column, and it's still using true for the range lookup. So the only thing that changed when we copied and pasted this formula was the lookup value reference. Now I'm going to go to the next worksheet in this workbook. It's the same problem. Let me zoom in, make it a little bit more readable. The only difference is that my lookup table is an actual Excel table. Microsoft introduced a feature called lists in Excel version 2010. They renamed it to tables in Excel 2013. And if you cut your teeth on an earlier version of Excel, like Excel 97 like I did, this new feature kind of throws you off at first. But we'll do the exact same VLOOKUP function, just using an Excel table. We're going to create our formula the exact same way. I'm going to say equals VL. It found the VLOOKUP function, so I'm going to press tab. My lookup value, I'm still going to click on cell B2 and hit comma. For my table array, I'm going to select all the values in my table. But you'll notice instead of using cell references like E3 through F7, Excel is using the name of my table instead. So it just looks different. I'm going to hit comma. My column index number is still 2. And for the range lookup, I still want an approximate match. So I'm going to type true and close that with a closing parentheses and hit enter. I'm going to double click on the box in the bottom right hand corner of cell C2, and it's going to fill in that formula down that column. And I get the exact same answers. So the only difference when using an Excel table is how the formula looks. Instead of the cell references, it's using the name of the table. So you'll notice that I didn't have to use any dollar signs. and I have to change the cell references. Because Excel recognized that I was selecting my entire table, it's using that name in the formula. So when working with Excel tables, whenever possible, I would recommend clicking and highlighting instead of typing in the table names or column names manually. So here, in this example, we're looking up scores on a continuous range using an approximate match. I am going to change this true to false. It's going to cause problems, but we can talk about why it's causing a problem. You can see that it did find one grade. When I say false, Excel looks for an exact match. So the score is 85. Excel comes to my lookup table and it says, is this 85? No. Is this 85? No, 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 no. It did not find the value 85 in this table. So it gave me the NA error, saying that the value just was missing. It can't be done. However, if we come down to Jack's score, Jack scored a 60. The value 60 was found in my lookup table. So it says, okay, it found 60, so the grade is a D. So by putting false, it looks for an exact match. By putting true in the range lookup, it looks for an approximate match by searching in ascending order. So in this case, we do want an approximate match. But let's look at a case where we do want an exact match. I'm going to come here to this spreadsheet. Let's suppose we have a list of customers. We have the customer name, we have a zip code, but we don't know what state each customer is in. But we do have a lookup table where we have a list of zip codes and we have the states that those zip codes are in. So I'm going to look up the zip code in this table and I'm going to find what state it's in. You can see that this table is not sorted in ascending order. 98005 is technically greater than 90001, even though these zip codes, we will treat them, they should be treated as text. They shouldn't be treated as a continuous number range. So let's do a lookup to find out what state Joe Jones lives in. So I'm going to type VL, hit tab. My lookup value, again, that's the information that I know. I know the zip code. So I'm going to click on B2, type a comma. I'm going to select my table array, just the values, not the headers. That's important. Because I'm using regular cell ranges here, E3 through F7, I'm going to type F4 to make those absolute references so that when I copy and paste my formula, it's still going to refer to the correct lookup table. And again, the zip code is in column 1, the state is in column 2. We want the state. That's the information that we're looking for. So the column index number, that's the information that I want. I want column 2, so I'm going to type 2 there. And the range lookup. It's important here to type false. We want an exact match. So for Joe Jones, it found that 85721 is in Arizona. We can look that up manually and we can see that it worked. So I'm going to double click and fill down the line. 90001 is in California. That appears to be correct. 10467 is in New York. Good, the exact match appears to be working. Now let's say I have a new customer and the zip code is 98765. Excel cannot find that in this lookup table. it cannot find 98765 anywhere in here. So it gives me the NA error, just saying it couldn't be found. And that's what should happen. If there's a new zip code and it's not in our table, we would need to add it. Let's see what would happen if we made this true and we copy this down. This is a bad practice for this specific instance. All of a sudden you can see that 98765, it thinks it's in New York. Well, we know that's not correct. And Jane Jennings, 10467, it can't find it. That's a problem. If you remember from previously, it's because our table is not sorted in ascending order, so it's causing problems. It's even telling us incorrect information if we're using the range lookup. So if we're using the approximate match, excuse me. So I'm going to change this back to false because I want an exact match. And I'm going to copy this down. And everything is working out correctly. If I wanted to change this, I wanted to add a new location. I'm going to call this new city. Now that value didn't change because my lookup table is still referring only to cells E3 to F7, so I need to expand that. So I'm just going to highlight this 7, change it to an 8. Excel highlights the newly expanded table. I'm going to hit enter, but I still have to copy this down. So I'm going to double click on the bottom right box in that cell. And now it tells me that new customer lives in new city. So good, my lookup table is working. We're going to go to the last sheet. And here we're using an Excel table. But again, this is going to work the same way. So I'm just going to type equals VL, hit tab. I'm going to look up the zip code, hit comma. I'm going to highlight the values in my table array, not the headings. I don't have to change the cell references because it's using the named range. I'm going to hit comma and the column index number. So that's the information that I want. I want the state, and the state is in the second column of my table array. So I'm going to type 2, and I want an exact match. So I'm going to type false. You can see Excel gives you the hint there. True for an approximate match, false for an exact match. I want it to be exact, so I'm going to type false. Because we're using an exact match, sorting in our lookup table doesn't matter. Excel will search the whole table for the value that it's looking for to find it. So I'm going to copy this formula down. This time I'm going to click and drag down, and it looks like all of our zip codes looked up the states correctly. So the VLOOKUP function, it's very powerful. Hopefully this video clears up some of the questions you may have had. I'm going to go back to the first worksheet. Go ahead, download this worksheet, try it out, see if you can get the same answers.